overview of MRP.
SAP Business One, the simple yet powerful solution for material requirements planning. This demonstration shows how SAP Business One lets you analyze inventory supply and demand and receive automated make or buy recommendations, providing a single integrated solution that enables you to maintain cost-effective inventory levels, make informed decisions, and quickly respond to customer demands. SAP Business One provides an MRP wizard. In just 5 easy steps, you can analyze supply and demand for manufactured goods and purchased items. You can create a new scenario or select an existing one. In this example, we select a scenario for the SBO 100 pump. You can enter parameters such as the scenario name. You can define the planning horizon by days or weeks. Enter dates to calculate the report length. You can run the scenario for a single item, a group of items, or item properties. You can also select properties for the results. For example, you can see finished good items first and then components. Next, you can define supply and demand criteria. You can consider existing stock levels, purchase orders, sales orders, production orders, and more. You can also include a sales forecast. SAP Business One lets you define sales forecasts for different demands and different periods. In this scenario, we choose the high forecast. You can consider the initial stock quantities for a specific warehouse or all warehouses. After you run the scenario, the results appear in the MRP results window. There is a row for each item and a column for each period in the planning horizon. The quantities show the net requirement for that item on that day. A requirement for a finished good creates an MRP for all components. You can expand each row to see the net requirements calculation. On May 26, there is a net requirement of 400, an initial stock quantity of 0, and a gross requirement of 400. You can peg to see what's driving the requirements. There are 2 sales orders, each with a quantity of 50. There's also a high forecast demand of 300. You can drill down for more information. The quantity is 400 in the forecast, but 300 in the pegging information window. We have selected to have sales orders consume the forecast, so sales orders won't inflate inventory. Now you can save the recommendation to the Order Recommendation Report. SAP Business One automatically generates an Order Recommendation Report. The report shows which items should be made or bought based on a range of parameters. As requirements change, new recommendations are saved to the report. You can sort the report by a range of criteria. By selecting the header, you can create all the items listed, or you can select specific items. If purchasing several items from one vendor, you can consolidate them in a single purchase order. Items with an exception are clearly marked and include an exception message. You can easily select an alternative item with a shorter lead time. You can also convert production orders to purchase orders. Enter the vendor code, and the last purchase price is automatically called in. The purchase orders and production orders are automatically created. They're clearly marked as originating from MRP, and each has a plan status.
Have you experienced delay or difficulties in scheduling? Now, you might be able to avoid it because Chapter 14 is about Materials Requirement Planning or MRP and Enterprise Resource Planning or ERP that will help you solve that problem. MRP is a computer-based information system that translates the finished product requirements of the master schedule into time-based requirements for sub-assemblies, component parts, working backward from due date using lead times. Historically, ordering and scheduling suffered from 2 difficulties. First is the enormous task of setting up schedules and keeping track of large numbers of parts. Second is the lack of differentiation between the independent and dependent demand. By the way, take note, it is a computer software and a system. It is as much as a philosophy as much as technique and an approach to scheduling as it is to inventory control, or for simplicity, its objective is not to control inventory. Rather, helps you systematically plan your scheduling. Now, let's differentiate independent from independent demand. Dependent demand is a demand for items that are component of a finished product. For example, is a tire of an automobile. While independent demand simply does not vary on the demand of anything. Example is a car. This graph clearly illustrates how this MRP system works. From the inputs to outputs, you can see what the whole process is about. First, of course, is the inputs, in which we put data to start working with. Part of the input is the master schedule or master production schedule. In here, you will be able to find out in which items are to be produced, when they are needed, and at what quantities. Master schedule is the plan of the production which will enable us to forecast and plan out the orders to meet the required date of completion. Another source of information is the BOM or the Bill of Materials that contains listing all of assemblies and sub-assemblies parts that are needed to produce one unit of finished product. In BOM, you will find out the product structure tree, meaning the parts that complete the whole unit of finished product. It will help us to plan what to order first because a single part sometimes cannot be completed without having the other part. First, that's why it should be in hierarchy. And also, the issue of timing should be considered because an error in timing will disrupt the whole process and schedule. And the third source of input is the inventory records, which refers to stored information on the status of each item on certain time period. Here, you will be able to identify how many items do you have on hand and so that you will know if you have enough item or parts to use. Inventory in hand should not be too high nor too low. After all the information that was inserted into the system, next phase is the MRP processing, in which you start to explode or divide them into time-based requirements for assemblies. Simply, in here you will be using now the inputs or information that you have inserted in the system so that the orders be available for delivery as planned. But MRP is a living document that changes over time. The system should be updated whenever the situation requires them to do so, because accuracy of the information makes this system work efficiently. There's two types of system to update it. The regenerative, which updates it periodically, while the other is the net change system, which is continuously updating whenever there's a change. Then the last phase of this system is the MRP outputs, which consists of primary and secondary reports. Primary reports is about production and inventory planning control. It includes the planned orders, order releases, and change to planned orders. It is all about the schedule, authorization of the execution of planned orders, and revisions of due dates and quantities. While the secondary report consists of performance control reports that evaluates the system operations, how the system works. Planning reports, it's about the forecast of the future inventory requirement, and last is the exception reports, which call in the attention to major discrepancies, late and overdues. Take note, though only secondary reports, but useful and helpful too. MRP has its own benefit that really aid and solve some major problems of the management in the production. First, is it enable managers to easily determine the quantities of every component of given order size to know when to release orders for each component. Second is the low level of in-process inventories. And the third is the ability to track of materials and many more. But MRP has also some requirements, of course. First is a computer, since it is a software. Second is a software program for MRP. Then third is an accurate records. And the fourth is the integrity of the file datas.
Here is an example of MRP software.